Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to discuss a case that I have actually discussed from the healthcare perspective angle as well as systems of care that needs to awaken, be it social care, legal care, financial care, socioeconomic care, family care, and regular life practices perspective. That thing I have discussed in my other YouTube webpage. If anyone is interested in finding out about their webpage, post a comment here and I will link. I'll post about my other webpage here. But in this webpage, which is about spiritual and earthly insights, I am discussing the psychological impact of what is going on and the spiritual, greater overarching spiritual level impact of this case, both on this family as well as this part of Florida where this case is unfolding, as well as the global ramifications of similar cases where people are going through similar challenges like Tracy Nix is going through in their personal or professional lives, where when trying to do the right thing or when having done many right things, someone has been maligned for something that was not completely their control, that was not completely due to their choices. And I'm discussing the psychological things because it plays a role, it is an important factor how human psychology impacts how you karmically behave with another human being. And the karma you generate when you are unawakened or a unconscious soul is a very different karma than what you generate when you are a awakened soul, aware soul. And despite your awareness of another human's problems and troubles, the people who are deliberately harming towards another generates a very separate kind of karma that no religion has addressed so far, or very few religions addressed it in the past, but it needs to be addressed right now because this is an important part of human evolution of this century, that people need to understand the personal culpability they accrue when they have generated a karma which God can't carry for them anymore, because they have already overpassed the limits of what God could carry, what Jesus Christ could carry for them. In all religions, the element of forgiveness is present and taught. At least I have gathered from at least 3 of the religions related to forgiveness paradigms, which I studied in the last few years. At the level of understanding of the deeper elements of those religion, one can consider my understanding to be very superficial, but it is not superficial at the spiritual element of what I'm speaking about. The spiritual teachings that I needed to learn from them is what I learned. So about forgiveness in the Islam religion, it talks about praying to God. There are some Islamic prayers that I have heard in recent times which were translated in a YouTube video. So even though it was in a different language, the gist that I gathered from those prayers showed to me that all those prayers were, some of the elements of those prayers were about asking mercy and forgiveness to God for any past crimes someone might have done. In Christianity also, Jesus Christ said he came to take the sin of everyone, so he pays for people's sins, and he did pay for people's sins when he was crucified. And in Hinduism, Krishna was here on earth when and he killed a person called Shishupal in Krishna's story. If anyone wants to learn about Hinduism, you can learn Shishupal's story, where he was doing atrocious behavior for many years on many people, and when he had reached his 100th crime, that's when Krishna killed him. Same way in Durga's stories, when Durga goes and kills the Mahishasur, even though it's not described in the story, that Asur was doing a lot of torture and abuse to people, and because of which whatever level of abuse or torture that person was doing, when that limit was crossed, that is when a avatar of God like Durga comes and vanquishes them. So this part people forget about this in normal lives, because people think if you are Christian or if you are asking and praying so much for forgiveness, people assume that just praying for forgiveness or having faith that Jesus Christ will help them with their forgiveness or has paid for their sin, and that's why their personal accountability is gone. That kind of a mistaken unconscious perception can start subconsciously developing in certain people, and in certain people it consciously develops, where they decide to start playing a karmic game, deciding that in one lifetime or in they will do something good for someone and then they will do something evil towards them, and that way they are karmically balancing the scales. But karma and karma scales don't work like that. God's justice doesn't work like that. And God's justice does include punishment when punishment is necessary, when destruction is necessary, some destruction will be there. The punishment, God has a lot of mercy. God is a ever patient God. That's why, being a patient God, the choices that Krishna, that's why I had to wait for 100 sins to be committed. And all those people who were suffering as a result of those 100 sins that Shishupal committed had to suffer as a result of it, because of multiple karmic and spiritual reasons why they had to suffer. And that would be very individual specific, case by case specific cases that God will know deeply as to why they suffered. But many of them were given as a choice to Shishupal, where Shishupal had a free will choice to not commit a crime against them, and he had a lot of opportunity to not commit a crime and make a better choice. But when he doesn't make those kind of better choices, that is when a Shishupal like person is eliminated by God. And this is true of every single human being. It is not simply this tale of Hinduism. You can take it as a tale, you can take it as a myth, you can take it as a religious spiritual teaching. It is up to you how you view these tales, but understand that it is about key core human value related and principles related, spiritual principles related teachings about how you are supposed to have a earthly existence. And yes, if God takes away your sin, like for in recent years I had very toxic thoughts arising in my mind, where some of the toxic thoughts were coming from other people around me, some of the toxic thoughts were my own toxic thoughts, and I felt I was doing something that was unforgivable as well, because I thought of things that were very darkness filled. And at that point of time, I started getting messages about Christ, started getting messages about all these different religions, about forgiveness related things, which is how I came to the conclusions that I'm talking about in this video related to forgiveness. Is that if you forgive another truly from the bottom of your heart, then only you are able to actually get the full mercy and forgiveness from God as well. You have to truly forgive someone at the soul level, truly understand them at a deeper soul level, to understand the context of why they might have done something spiritually or practically in your life, leading to a harm in your life. And when you have deeply learned that lesson and truly forgiven someone, this is the level at which God also operates, when God is forgiving someone, when God is carrying the burden of someone's forgiveness as well. Because there is always a deeper consequence of pain and suffering that is aided by humanity when humanity doesn't choose to forgive, as well as when humanity commits a crime against someone else that leads to that leads to pain and suffering. But sometimes there are people who are not deliberately committing any crime at all. They were meant to do something that was just a ordinary part of their existence, and what was perceived as a crime by them was not actually their crime at all, or only partially their crime, but it was enabled by other people who led them to do that act. As a result, there are also deeper elements to forgiveness as well, which God evaluates, God looks at, and humans also, when you are evolving as a human, you have to also understand about those levels of forgiveness where there is no direct cruel act that was actually done, or the act that you perceive as a cruel act may not be a cruel act at all in that particular case. So, which is why I am talking about, or it is a cruel act definitely done, but not by the person you are perceiving did the act. And that's why only I am discussing the Tracy Nix case, because there in her case I find enough evidence that suggests to me that covert manipulative abuse and covert manipulation was going on. The kind of abuse that she was going through is possibly also very similar in some ways to the kind of abuse Giselle Pelicot and her family or other people in the France area who possibly went through something, other women possibly also went through something similar like Giselle Pelicot went through in France. Because understand, when there are multiple over 50 men were responsible in her Giselle Pelicot's rape, and in those over 50 men who were responsible in her rape after drugging her, those men also were likely using those same tactics, and it was going on for over 10 years. 10 years has only been the detectable amount that the cops have investigated and found so far as evidence. But something, and these people were in the Giselle Pelicot was married for many decades. So because she was married for many decades, it is not possible that only for 10 years some abuse was going on with her. Prior to these 10 years of abuse that her husband manufactured in her life or brought into her life, there were possibly another few years of undetectable abuse, other kinds of covert abuse that was going on with her that no one has recorded, and has possibly no recording except in God's eyes the recording has happened, because there was no videographic evidence or photographic evidence of those cruelties that she went through in her life with her spouse. So that's why only that element people usually forget. People don't realize, even when they see and witness some evidence of something happening, that there could be many other ancillary reasons, many other things going on beyond what your physical evidence has gathered and collected about someone. And those are the things that people now need to understand about Tracy Nix's case. And for me, the case unfolded as, first I read the case of read a story about her a few months or a year back, when initially the second child had died, and a newspaper article blaming her related to how a grandmother could be negligent. That kind of an article is what I had read about her. At the time, I had actually been working on certain elements related to health and healthcare related topics I was posting on Facebook. So I believe I had posted something on Facebook. I've posted thousands of things on my Facebook page currently. And I don't have a track now. When I scroll down on my page, it doesn't go further beyond certain maybe 100 things that I have written, and as a result I can't go back also to check up what I had written about this topic. And I had also, in certain cases, when certain discussions I had put on my page was a little triggersome, or I wasn't sure whether I should post it here, I had also deleted them. So I don't know if I deleted the discussion, but at that time I felt, when the first child had drowned, the accidental drowning had happened in her home where she had fallen asleep, and a baby under her care, who was her grandson, had wandered off from the bedroom and gone into the pool of the house, and he had drowned in the pool. And she hasn't been prosecuted for that case. I had also posted about how a baby being a naughty baby can wander off, a baby being a curious baby can also wander off. And haven't we had those instances where and if a toddler is in the growing stages also, I didn't post this in that website, but that is also something that needs to be considered. Website meaning that Facebook post that I had written. But another consideration is the child was a toddler of a certain age. So children, when they start walking and climbing things, they are also very curious children. So when children are curious and they like walking and climbing, and even if as a child you are sleeping with your grandparent, if the grandparent is asleep, many children who are hyperactive children or active and curious children, they are not. If you are a quieter child and you like spending time with your grandmother, or you want to laze around in the bed, that child will continuously keep sleeping in the bed only with the grandmother. But because I'm sure there are many parents and grandparents who have fallen asleep with the child when after having lunch or dinner, and then while the grandparent is sleeping longer hours or the parent is sleeping longer hours, the child can wake up and either stay on the bed or start crawling around. So the child could have done that. He could have been a curious child. He could have wanted to wander off because he's testing his, crawling capacity, walking capacity. I don't know whether he was at the walking stages or not, but he would have been the kind who would have wanted to wander around at the age he was at when he wandered off. And at that time, while wandering off now, earlier when I had read the case, I had no idea that Tracy Nix was a married woman with a married meaning obviously she has a grandchildren, so it's 90% likelihood that she might have been married and she's not a single, she has not raised her child singly. So that aspect is not where I was confused. But if someone is blaming a grandmother for lack of care of a grandchild, I assume that she was living in her house all by herself. But if she wasn't, and later on in the Tracy Nix's case, where for the second grandchild's death, she has been charged for the murder of those children. Only one child's murder was being judged at the court. But at that time also, when the second child had died, that is when I found out that she has a husband also who lives with her. So because a person who's a 60s, she's in the stories it's saying she's 67 years old. I don't know currently what her age is, whether she's currently 67 or at the time the children died, that time she was 67, that I don't know, but she's in her 60s, right? And a person who's in her 60s, they could be a widow, they could be separated from their spouse, they could have divorced their spouses, right? All these things could have happened. They could have been a single mother who raised their children for a long time in their life. All of these could be a factor to someone who's a particular age. And when no one is mentioning the husband, at that time it means that the husband is either absent, was never present in the life of the children, grandchildren, or the husband is dead, or the husband is separated and divorced from the spouse, right? That is what you will assume. But then I was shocked to see that her husband is present in her life, and he was also there in the premises when the second baby died. So now that is what is raising now my question. During the time the toddler wandered away, the first baby grandson, when the grandson had died and drowned and died, was the grandfather present in the home? So if the grandfather was present in the home, how is it that no one is asking the question as to what was the grandfather doing? If you have a curious child in your home and if you are heavily asleep, obviously you will not wake up to the curious child crawling around the room or climbing down the bed. But if another grandparent is present who is not sleeping, who is awake at that time, who is doing some other activity in the home, understand that most of us are attuned so much to our family life's conditions that when other people are around in our homes, most of us will be aware about other people in our homes. And very rarely, unless you are having some hearing problem, that time only you will not hear a curious child wandering around the home. And the child, I don't know how distant the bedroom of the grandmother was from the pool. It could have been only a few yards away, that all the child had to do was open the door of the bedroom, wander off, go into the, open the door of the patio and then wander off into the swimming pool. That could have happened. Some people have very short distances to travel from their room to the swimming pool, but it depends on which room you were sleeping, right, of the house. And if it is a larger house, and considering it's Florida, I know Florida is known for some large size houses, and many houses, homes in US are usually retired people's homes are usually a larger home. So I'm assuming, and they also had a barn in the second story, and in her, from her testimony and only I have found out that they have a huge backyard, they have a barn and all these areas. So if they have these extra background area also, I've been to a couple of homes, not in Florida, I've never been to Florida, but I have lived in US for 13 years. I've traveled to different cities of US in those 13 years, and in some of those homes which do have large barn and large backyards, in those kind of homes, usually those homes are very large homes. So again, if it was a larger sized home where the distance from the bedroom to the swimming pool is a large distance, how is it possible that any other adult being in the home didn't understand the baby was crawling around in the home? So that is also because he would have been a very curious baby. So either the other person didn't know about it, or the other person deliberately didn't chose not to take care of the child, which is also a major thing people need to understand, because covert abusers are like that. Covert abusers will enable abuse of someone, like for that is why I have mentioned also, and even though I keep don't want to accuse this person unnecessarily, but it brings to question why no one is questioning the fact that the grandfather also should be held responsible if he was in the premises both the times when both the children were there in the home. Now, no one questioning that itself should lead to mistrial of Tracy Nix's trial, because how is it that she is in a home with another person and the other person is completely clueless about what is going on in the home? In my home, when I have been raised by my grandparents for shorter time periods during childhood days where I was staying with my grandparents, at that time it is not possible that it was never possible that any of my grandparents didn't know what we were doing. The only time they didn't know what the grandchild is doing is one of my grandmothers was one who used to go above. We had an upstairs room where she would go and pray to God for 4-5 hours in the morning, 2-3 hours in the night time. So those hours of the day when my grandmother is going upstairs and it is in a room that is a completely secluded room, she will have no clue about what is going on with the grandchildren downstairs, because she's not in the premises of the downstairs area of the home where the grandchildren are hanging out. Or if as grandchildren we go out and play with other neighborhood children in some other neighbors' homes or in their backyards, at that time obviously none of the grandparents or parents know what is going to happen to us, because we are at someone else's home. So at those times, if the grandparents don't know what is happening to the child, it is understandable. But the moment I'm in the same floor as my grandparents, in the same, even though that home had like 1 2 3, we had like 6 7, like 5 bedrooms and some rooms that were converted into drawing room, living room. So like that there were many rooms of the house. But even though there are many rooms of the house, in general you know where your grandchild is going to be. They are going to be in either bedroom 1 2 3, or in the balcony, or in the terrace. You have some general idea what your grandchild is doing when the grandchild is the one you are supervising, right? So some rough idea you will have. So it's not possible. And if for 2-3 hours your child is not making a noise, or a grandchild is not making a noise, you will be curious as to what the grandchild is doing. There were always something our grandparents wanted us to do, like we used to be at least 4 cousins hanging out in the vacation time in that home. So when 4 of us are hanging out and doing something, but we need to be fed, and these are all child caretaking activities you do. The child might need to be fed, the child might need to be changed, the child might need to bathe. I don't have any memories of how my grandparents handled us when we were toddlers, because I was too young. But after 5-10 years of age, when I remember all the interactions with my grandparents very more deeply, every few hours, and even though I'm not a toddler, and a toddler needs to be even more monitored, right? When you're a toddler, as far as I know about toddler related care, I have worked in a preschool, I have had friends who have had toddlers and infants, and I have seen some superficially some child care taking activities I have helped them with. So I know that a toddler or an infant constantly needs monitoring. And always, in any of my friends' homes also, the husbands were always available to help, or at least mindfully aware of what the child is doing. It is not possible that the husband is doing their own thing in the corner of the home while the wife is doing the whole child caretaking activity all the time. The only time the husband is not aware is if the husband was never in the home and was outside the home doing something else, household chores. Because in my other grandparents' house, where my other grandfather was not as active and proactive in child caretaking activities, even then he had some things, smaller minor child caretaking things he would do. Like we had to have water that needed to be pumped from the tube well for our showers. so the water that needs to be carried from the outside of the home to the inside of the bathroom, or that distance, because we are small children, we are not going to be able to carry a full bucket of water, so our grandfather used to carry it for us. Or if so that minor level he would do something. But see, again, if a 5-10 year old child is also there under your care, you're still doing some child caretaking, while the cooking might have been done by my grandmother, while the feeding might have been done by her, while sleeping together after during nap time we were sleeping with our grandmother, during night also many a times we would sleep with our grandmother. But while all these major caretaking was still being done by the grandmother, still minor caretaking related to what time we need to take a bath, what time we should have some food. If sometimes during snack times, in both my grandparents homes, my grandparents were mindful grandparents, so if we are hungry, and they know we will be hungry invariably after lunch also around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or that's the tea time of the family, so because of the tea time only they will start chopping some cucumbers, and we would have cucumber salad like thing, or we would eat something, we would have some snack like food during that time, or we would have some fruits like oranges or seasonal fruits, that during that time whatever seasonal fruits is available, that is what we would eat. So all these things grandparents only used to do. Major feeding related things also my grandparents used to do. Minor feeding related things, if the grandmother is doing the major feeding, the grandfather will be doing the minor feeding. If the grandfather is doing the major feeding, then grandmother is doing the minor feeding. All these things, combination of things used to happen in my grandparents' lives. And they were also married like Tracy Nix. Like when I was experiencing this life with my grandparents, they were all around 60 years age when this memories that I have with my grandparents are from them being somewhere between 55 to 65 years, 70 years of age time frame is when I spent all these memories with my grandparents. So that's why only it is very surprising to me if nothing is asked about the grandfather of these children, especially if he's alive and he was staying with his wife and they were not divorced, not separated. He was also being a retired person. If she is retired as a 67-year-old school teacher, that means that her husband was also retired. So if he is also a retired person, then what was he doing in the 2-3 hours that she fell asleep? That is the first question everyone has ignored. The second, more insidious question, which is related to covert narcissistic abuse, is this: that covert narcissistic abusers do not take accountability at all of the things that they have done, or they consciously choose to do or consciously choose to not do. And which is the problem with Tracy Nix, because when she was crying in her testimony, I saw her testimony the last. And after seeing her testimony, I had to make a new video, even though I had thought I am only making 5 series of videos about the case. After seeing her testimony, I had to make a 6th video, and this is now the 7th video that I am making, but on a different page. So when I saw her testimony, and I saw how much she was crying. If anyone says that she was not accountable or she doesn't have consciousness about the crime, about the death that happened under her care, they are wrong to assume that she doesn't have a consciousness, that she was not pained at the fact that the 2 children died under her care. And also she was going through something called complex trauma that not many people will understand if you do not have this kind of covert abuse going on. Her brains also even now can't comprehend that level covert abuse could have been going on with her. But I am 90% sure that by now, since 2-3 years have passed, many months have passed, she's slowly trying to piece together what happened. Because firstly, when the second child died, that day itself she was going to have a complex trauma, because 2 children that she loved deeply, they died under her care. And she's a school teacher, so obviously a school teacher, if she was ever a very responsible and good school teacher and a principal, then it is not possible that she doesn't have a responsible genes in her, accountability genes in her. And the genes that made her efficient as a school teacher means that efficient as a school teacher and a principal also means that she was also that level efficient as a grandmother as well. It's just that you have to understand when covert abuse is going on, there are multiple ways in which covert abusers can make a competent person seem like an incompetent person. And a covert abuser waits also. Some of the covert manipulative abusers that I know in my life, they have waited 10 years, 5 years, many years to exact some kind of slow, cold, calculating, revenge like things against me, simply like because they don't like what I'm doing, or they essentially have a problem with me just being me, and they want to make it seem that me just being mean, me Purba Marek, being a particular kind of personality, they want to show to the outside world that this personality is not how she is supposed to be. And this thing happened in my life. I've mentioned my dad's abuse of my mother many times because he's continuously done that, and for many years I didn't understand he was doing covert abuse of my mother. After I left my dad's care and I lived in US for 13 years as an independent adult, then slowly I started understanding my mother's abuse related factors of her life. But even then, at that time, in the first 13 years when I was living in US, the abuse that I understood about my mother was the overt kind of abuse that was happening related to verbal abuse, verbally being slighted about things that she was competent in doing, but constantly her spouse would make it seem as if she's very incompetent. These were all the very overt and easily identifiable parts of abuse that was happening to her, which many people had witnessed, but also many people had also witnessed her covert abuse without realizing that covert abuse and malicious abuse was going on with her. So and each of us has very different types of personalities in our we have a different personality trait. So in certain personality traits, if someone teases you about something where you understand what they are teasing you about, at that time you have a choice. Like, you may enjoy the teasing if it was no malicious intent was there. You may enjoy the teasing if you don't mind being teased by someone who is making fun of you. You may also enjoy the teasing, and while being teased it is fine, but if it repeatedly keeps happening to you, you may start getting pissed off also as to why are you being made the butt of jokes. But sometimes you may also not enjoy the teasing, but you may not understand why you are being teased, because you are a very innocent soul, and let's say someone is doing a non-veg joke with you, and that non-veg level joke, because you have an innocent brain, you don't even comprehend what that non-veg joke means. So if someone is playing a non-veg joke on you, it will completely go above your brain capacity to understand that someone played a non-veg joke on you. But for a covert manipulative abuser, that is also a type of predatory behavior where they'll do non-veg things in front of someone, because I had that kind of covert abuse also going on where non-veg things were being done. Like, some people showed me sketches, nasty sketches that sexually perverted sketches and things like that. And when you're a 10-year-old child, are you going to understand that's a sexually perverted sketch? No. But when did I understand? I watched a sexually perverted sketch in my home life after 10 years, when I have watched things related to porn and things like that, or dark stuff in the movies, that has finally led me to understand what I had witnessed 10 to 20 years as a 10-year-old child, 8-year-old child was a perverted thing, right? So sexual predators or sexual abusers or covert abusers do these kind of tactics with their victims. And like that, consistently many nasty things happened to me in my childhood, which were all very superficially, it seems like very, as a child you will not understand something like that is happening to you. Same way, if my mother was a very innocent soul, as a innocent soul who didn't know what is a non-veg joke, who has never watched a book of porn or movie of porn or read something that was pornographic, she will also not understand that that kind of nasty thing is going on with her. But even if you don't understand it, if it is something nasty, if it is something cruel, if it is something you're not understanding, but still a level of cruelty is involved or abuse is involved that you may not comprehend was abusive, but technically it is still abusive. In the case of Giselle Pelicot, when Giselle Pelicot's all these people are saying and challenging that they didn't know whether they didn't know that she was unconscious. Some said they didn't know she was unconscious. Some said that they didn't know it is rape, or some all sorts of rubbish garbage they are giving in their defense. But the truth is, a man and a woman, when they are meant to have sex, it is supposed to be a mutually consensual act between two human beings where both are agreeing that we will have sex right now. And the moment one of the person is not giving any consent at all, you've already violated that soul contract with that person of sex, where sex is basic criteria that both people have to consent is gone. And even if how much ever manufactured evidence is caught, and then if they were drugged or while having sex some other manipulations were going on, that is also considered rape. There are many rape cases where in certain countries rape related laws people should read. I'm not going to discuss here, or marriage related laws also people should read. But there are many places where people can get manipulated into marriage, manipulated into sleeping with someone, and then that is considered also as rape. When if you, let's say you promise someone, I'm going to marry you, and then in India that is one of the laws that used to be there. I don't know if it's still valid, but let's say I said a boy says to a girl, I will marry you, and the girl knows that they are going to get married. They're going to be married in a year or two, or in a month or two, and a month or two before the marriage, or months before the marriage, he sleeps with the girl. Now the girl is sleeping because she knows this is going to be a future husband, and many people might think that if I'm going to marry this person, whether I sleep with them before marriage or after marriage, it doesn't matter. In the modern world, to many women, it doesn't matter whether you marry someone before, sleep with someone before marriage or after marriage. But it does matter, because it is a breach of contract if you have slept with someone and you had promised them that you are going to marry them. But in India it is a crime, considered as a crime, or can be considered as a rape, because if many people, while some people genuinely can have marital, like you slept with someone, then you had the 6-7 months or 1-2 years of relationship, and there was genuine relationship trouble between you, and then if you broke up, and at that time if you are charging that it was a rape, it is a false allegation possibly. But if you were not continuously sleeping with someone, or if you were sleeping with someone by just promising them, making false promises to them that you are going to marry them, then have you violated someone's trust, that basic trust of sex, that the woman is sleeping with you because she thinks you're going to be her spouse, but you are sleeping with her simply by giving her a false lie of a future marital life when you have no intention of marrying her. Maybe you are already married, maybe there were other things going on, whatever it is, at that time it can become a breach of contract, right? So that's why all these things related to rape, all these things related to two humans sleeping with each other needs to be deeply understood at a soul level as well, practical level, as well as a spiritual level, because there's a lot of spiritual harm also you're doing to another soul if you are drugging them, duping them, manipulating them into sleeping with you, and you are ready to not take any accountability. That is also some spiritual level sin that you are committing. The kind of sin, again, God has possibly some criteria and spiritual laws as to how long they will allow you to continue making that sin against certain women or one woman. But if you have continuously done that and you have reached your limit of that, then also you have to be held accountable for it. So these men, they have to, that's why, be held accountable in Giselle Pelicot's case for all the covert, that was also a kind of covert abuse. If you're drugging someone and then sleeping with them, the person doesn't know that you're sleeping with them. But does that mean the abuse didn't happen? Does that mean the rape didn't happen just because you're not aware that abuse and rape was going on? And while at the physical level, because she was physically subconsciously, she was physically unconscious, doesn't mean, or her even her sexual organs were relaxed by drugs and other things, so her sexual organs didn't receive any apparent sexual trauma, but her soul has received a soul trauma. Her emotions are receiving a trauma that later on is going to show up in her. And if you look at Giselle Pelicot's face, I understand she's an aged woman, but even though she's an aged woman, understand that the toll that betrayal takes on your soul and your memories and your body also, because while the sexual organ may not be harmed, it is still a violation of someone's body if someone is forcibly or unknowingly, unconsciously having sex with you without you giving permission for it. So that thing people don't understand, why it is a sexual sin, why it is should be considered as a sin, why it should be a prosecutable offense, and for multiple reasons, including the spiritual reasons of it also need to be examined. And like how Giselle Pelicot, for hours and hours all these men were having sex with her. So that many hours she was completely unaware what is going on with her body. Why? Because she was given chemicals to completely not remember her incidences of what was going on in the night with her. And if you're heavily drugged or 2-3 cocktail of drugs are given, there are many drugs that will wipe your memory. Along with that, also understand there are not only just drugs that can wipe your memory or conscious choices, but there's hypnosis also that can do it. And have you ever seen the episode of Friends show where Chandler is trying to quit smoking, and when he's trying to quit smoking, he comes to work pretending to be like a woman or something. So because he used to put on headphones while sleeping, some meditation related to it was actually a hypnotic neuro programming of his mind that was going on with those audio tapes that he was listening for quitting smoking. And while maybe most of the tape was about a man quitting smoking, if he started listening to a tape which was for giving counseling to a woman, he started having some womanly patterns, and his friend started observing it, and then he realized. So what was happening is, while sleeping, the video or audio that he was listening to, it was hypnotically influencing his brains to do something that consciously he would never have done as a guy. But because the video hypnotized him, he started doing things that he wouldn't have done. And the hypnosis was good for until the time he started behaving like a woman. The hypnosis was a good thing for him. Why? Because while he was being hypnotized by the audio tapes, he was also quitting smoking, right? So it had a good positive effect on him until the positive effect wasn't there anymore. So likewise, if someone in this Tracy's life was poisoning her or giving her deliberately drugs without her knowledge that she was being administered some drugs, and maybe those drugs had some positive effect, that it was helping her be calm, or someone had hypnotized her for some reason or the other, for malicious intent or the other, at that time what is going to happen is, if you were hypnotized, if you were drugged, you will do things that you will not remember. Or in Tracy's case, two things had happened. In the first child, when the toddler wandered away and drowned in the swimming pool, her grandson, when his death happened, at that time she was completely asleep. But you can be completely asleep because of someone hypnotizing you to sleep for hours and hours and not wake up, even if. And have you ever seen those magicians tricks also, where they hypnotize someone in front of a whole audience to do certain things, and when the person wakes up, they have no idea why they did what they did, right? So hypnosis is like that. And hypnosis, drugs that are drugs plus hypnosis could have happened with Tracy, most likely, is my conclusion based on her behavioral patterns. And when such a thing like that happens, you also lose track of time, which was also present in her video, her losing a little bit track of time about the hours that had happened, the time when she went to the restaurant for lunch, all the time was also off for her. And in my other video, I have given other reasons why she could have this wrong perception of the time she left the restaurant. But if you were hypnotized, that will also happen to you. Or if someone is drugging you and then hypnotizing you in your sleep, that can also happen to you. And at that time, what was happening with Tracy is that if with the first grandson's death, then is she culpable, or the person who hypnotized her and made her sleepy who gave her drugs to be sleepy, who gave her drugs to have confusion in her mind, is that person culpable? So is that necessary for people to understand who is the culpable person, while she was primarily responsible for caretaking both the children? If she was deliberately some manipulation of her health was going on, she's then not responsible for any harm that happened to the children, because the person who manipulated her thoughts, manipulated her sleep cycle, manipulated her choices, because hypnosis also manipulates your choices. How is someone quitting smoking via hypnosis? Someone is able to quit smoking via hypnosis because your choice to smoke is being hypnotically controlled and hypnotically cured. Same way, if how someone can stop smoking, someone can also start doing something in hypnosis. In hypnosis, you will see, right, some of these people are told to laugh in a funny way, jump around like a monkey. Things like that are also done to someone who is hypnotized. So like how you can tell someone to jump around like a monkey, someone can also tell, because in the first case she fell asleep, and she fell asleep for a long time, enough time for the child to wander off. So if the child's the bedroom was a far away bedroom, and it took possibly the child half an hour to crawl only from the bedroom to the swimming pool, and it's a baby, right? So a toddler will take small time, a lot of time of exploration, so it could have taken the toddler half an hour to 1 hour to wander off like that. So if she was only simply taking a nap like a normal human being, like a normal tired grandmother or a normal aged person after lunch sleeping for half an hour, she would have possibly only slept for half an hour or 15 minutes and woken up as soon as the toddler is wandering around the house and making some noise. But the fact that she didn't wake up means that it's very highly likely that she was drugged by someone, and that's why she couldn't wake up. And then because she couldn't wake up, the child wandered off. But also, if at that same point of time, the person who is drugging her, if that's the person who drugged her, and the person who deliberately, while staying in the same house as her, is not watching the child, the grandchild at all, is the other person culpable or not culpable? Does that need to be investigated or not investigated, right? And same way in the other toddler's case, when the Uriel died, there were about 2.5 hours of time where she was just simply playing the piano, petting the dog and doing all these things. Again, understand, a person who is hypnotizing you can hypnotically manipulate you into doing these things as well. Like how in front of a stage, the hypnotic person just clicks his hand one time and then clicks his hand the second time. The first time he clicks, he's saying, before I click, you will do blah blah blah. And then for in a stage show or a magician show, it's just a 5 minutes thing he makes someone do. But a person who can do that trick for 5 minutes for someone in front of a stage, if that person knows these things from before and is an expert at doing these things, they can also make someone do this for 2 to 3 hours as well. And like how someone can make you sing, someone can make you dance, someone can make you jump like a monkey, whatever things that a magician does to a hypnotized person. Same way, spouse who is wanting to maliciously harm someone, or someone else who's wanting to maliciously harm someone, can do that to another human being, and then after hypnotizing them, make them for hours and hours do certain things without them knowing why they did that or why she forgot. She was crying and crying because she also can't comprehend that how is it that she forgot Uriel. She kept giving the excuse that she must have been quiet, that's why I didn't hear her, and things like that. And while it is true that the child could have been quiet, in my other video I've also mentioned that there's very high likelihood that the child was also drugged. So if the child is getting drugged, the grandmother is getting drugged. Like if someone with a malicious intent has access to drugs, they can directly poison these people also. They can also engage someone into someone else into poisoning it, and they might think that, and they could have given all sorts of excuse that the child cries too much, so can you put it in their food? So they might have put something in the child's food, and when the child ate it, the child obviously fell asleep. So now it could have been an inadvertent thing that could have happened, deliberately done thing that could have happened to Uriel. such that, and she was showing symptoms of being poisoned on the day of death, when the medical examiner, not the medical examiner, I keep saying medical examiner, but when the paramedics were examining her body, at that time she had shown symptoms of being exposed to either some mind altering chemical, either those used for depression or psychosis or used for sleeping. Any of these medications can end up showing, or any or many of these medications in combination or by separate can end up showing some of the body symptoms that Uriel showed before she died. And then if she was sleepy, because direct poisoning had happened, or direct introduction of some chemical had happened in her body, either accidentally or done by someone, because she was quiet, because she was sleeping as a result of being drugged, she's naturally not going to cry now. Or so if she was not crying, naturally the grandmother also, after 15 minutes of driving her to home, that's why I also didn't realize, but if the grandmother had also already been hypnotized, where the person knew the likely time the grandmother will reach home might be 2 o'clock, and that person, hypnosis can happen anytime, so someone could have hypnotized her the previous day or in the morning, that the next time you come home while driving someone in the car, you will forget that person in the car. Someone can do that kind of hypnosis to you. Or when she came out of the car, someone could have done this hypnosis that every day from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock you will play the piano. Someone can do that also. Like, let's say the husband is having an affair. If he's having an affair, he can tell her that from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock you will be busy playing the pianos. Why? Because so that he can go from 2 to 4 and have an affair with someone else. That could be the reason why he could have hypnotized her. Whatever it is, someone, he or someone else who has some malicious intent, can hypnotize someone into keeping them into as if they are doing some normal activity. But understand that while it is a normal activity for them to enjoy playing a piano, enjoy playing with a dog, if you are a responsible person and you love your granddaughter, you are not going to do that. You will remember eventually after 15 minutes of entering the house that I forgot my granddaughter, or you will remember sometime in the day that I need to check out about my dog. Some subconscious thoughts will happen to you to wake you up that you have forgotten your granddaughter. But if you're heavily hypnotized or heavily abused, heavily drugged and hypnotized, at that time you don't get out of your hypnosis and you don't remember certain things. Because this has happened to me, where I have had multiple examples of hypnosis happening. I didn't know someone was hypnotizing me, because those people are very high level criminals who were hypnotizing me, high level malicious intent oriented people who were hypnotizing me for some ulterior motive of the other. But as a result of their hypnosis, there have been times where I've done things for hours and hours without knowing why am I doing this for hours and hours. Later on, like, even if I enjoy that activity, even if I love that activity, and even if I do have the capacity for hours and hours to be engaged in something, like let's say I'm knitting. I love to knit, so I can spend hours doing knitting. But the knitting I will do hours as a conscious human being is a very different knitting I will do for hours when I have been hypnotized to do it. Or there was one instance about my art class, and this happened in when I was doing art at my art class teacher's home. There are days when I forget completely about everything and I want to just be engrossed in the artwork that she has given me. Some days were there where I was engrossed like that, but there were also many days where some unusual thing happened and I don't even recollect what I did in that art class, and hours had passed in that art class, and I found that very strange, that how could 4 hours or 2 hours have simply passed away in this class without me doing anything significant or doing anything that seems like that should take me 4 hours to do or 2 hours to do. And at those times, and the person who had hypnotized me was someone from my home only, not someone in my art class. Someone in my home had hypnotized me, and the person who hypnotized me knew that I was going to be hypnotized like that. And like that, I've had multiple instances. This is something that happened to me as a child, but as an adult also, a couple of times these kind of things have happened. And I still don't know who has hypnotized me, or I can't point out, but if that abuser comes in front of me, I have trauma related to those abusers in my life, and then I start manifesting complex trauma in front of them. I start behaving, and this is another thing people need to realize, like if someone is continuously abusing you, even without you knowing you are getting abused. And hypnosis is also a form of abuse if they are abusing your free will choice of what to do, right? Because this is a free will choice. Like if she normally she can be a grandmother who comes inside, forgets the child for a few minutes, plays the piano for 15 minutes, then realizes, oh my god, I forgot the child, and will go to the car and pick up the child. That is what a normal person will be doing. That is going to be their free will choice. But if it is a artificially manipulated thing going on, where you are hypnotized to forget the child, hypnotized to sit and do activities in the home while the child is sitting in the car, all these are manipulation of your free will. It is also manipulation of your life, and it is also abuse and intended murder of Tracy. If, like, let's say someone convicts her for the death of the child, and she gets a death penalty, or she gets convicted for 10 years of life imprisonment, or whatever number of years of life imprisonment for child neglect, is it also abuse of her life, social circumstances, mental health, physical health, social health, everything? And like, you know, when and that complex trauma was, that's why building up in her as a response to, she already knows what she has gone through with the first child dying, and all those things are now repeating again with Uriel's death. So did someone deliberately do it? Most likely someone did. And she is also an abuse victim, she is also a complex trauma victim. She was showing, that's why only in that interrogation, when she's crying, she wants to just drive away, she can't face everyone. People are thinking she's saying she can't face everyone because she doesn't want to face the fact that she made a mistake. But that is for whom? The person who is a less accountable person, the person who is less responsible, the person who is a frivolous personality type. For them, running away from their trouble is something they will do. I can't face it, I can't face it, will mean that. But for Tracy, it was not that. She was not saying that she can't face, she is saying I can't face everyone, but it is not about not being able to face the accountability of what happened, but what she is not able to face it, which has happened to me also, because I'm going through currently complex trauma and complex life challenge. And one day I kept crying and crying to God that I can't do this anymore, please end this. All these kind of things started coming out from my mouth, and I have been thinking about these thoughts for many years also. Because when you are in a complex abuse with a manipulative abuser, where no one is understanding your abuse, or people can't comprehend the level of abuse that you are going through, or even in case of people who are hypnotized by their abusers, they don't even have half an idea of the level of abuse that they have gone through. In all of these cases, understand that while consciously you may not be aware of many things going actually wrong in her life, subconsciously your body, your mind, your soul knows how much you have been betrayed. And when subconsciously you know how much you have been betrayed, or how, you know, someone has manipulated the whole thing to make you look like the victim, make you look like the person responsible for these children's deaths, all these, understand, Tracy is slowly formulating in her brain the day the Uriel child died. So it's just that she doesn't have the exact reasons for why this happened to her. Like, she could be unaware that she was hypnotized, she could be unaware that she was drugged, but she knows something is wrong. Like, your soul will know. When I have done something, also my soul will know. When I have not done something, also my soul will know. Even if my conscious brain doesn't know, and someone has hypnotized the memory out of me, or drugged me to clear the memory of the episode, because there are many day trip drugs also. When you take that day trip drug, whatever happened to you, and which is what happened to Giselle Pelicot, whatever was happening to her when she was given those day trip type of drugs, or a cocktail of such drugs, she just doesn't remember also her abuse. Only through videotapes she knows that this abuse has happened. But while consciously through videotapes she's seeing some abuse has happened to her, understand that subconsciously her soul was always aware that some betrayal was happening to her. And at that point of time, you will also see many women, they have bad marriages with their spouses. Why do they have bad marriages with their spouses? Most of the time such women are also considered as the guilty party or the abuser of their husband, people not understanding that the abuse actually was happening to the women at a physical and soul level, when every time the husband has been raping her, every time the husband has been hypnotizing and doing nasty acts with her. So while memory wise she may not, some women will tolerate also a husband being a husband, they will tolerate all the nasty sex the husband is doing to them. But again, the memory of because if it is a soul violation, if it is a misaligned way of having sex, meaning something that violates your basic essence as a human being, it's called astitva in Hindi. If your basic essence as a human being is violated by how someone is touching your body or making love to you or having sex with you, just because they are husbands, many times women forgive those acts because they are their husbands. And it can happen to opposite gender also, but it generally happens to women. So when it's happening to women, a woman is feeling their soul essence being violated by another human being, many women, if consciously their partner engaged in such nasty acts with them, or some act that the woman is uncomfortable doing with the spouse, at a time also you will see those women having a next day after such nasty sex, or a week after they have processed that nasty sex, they will speak rudely to the spouse. Why? But is that mean that the woman is the abuser, or is she the was she covertly abused and overtly abused, and a latent reaction to abuse is happening when after a week or after 2 days she shouts at her husband about something very seemingly harmless, but it's not harmless because some soul harm was done to her. And people at the spiritual level, if people want humanity to progress into better quality humanity, every human has to wake up about the sacred sanctity of sex, and understanding that when the sanctity of sex is not present in a marriage, these kind of abuses continuing in many women's lives for many years. In case of Giselle Pelicot, it was a very extreme form of that toxic pattern continuing, and any other French women who have undergone similar circumstances as Giselle. Again, it is something, and not just in France, there are multiple women around the globe who could have had similar experiences like Giselle, and the evidence for their abuse just simply doesn't exist if their partner didn't record it, or if whatever recording was taken, it was deleted. Again, the evidence for their abuse will not be there in the physical evidence, but it will always be there in the memory of the subconscious memory of the person being abused, and then the way they will then behave with the person abusing them, their behavioral patterns. That's why can you be nice, like if Krishna also after 100 crimes has to kill Shishupal, if Durga also has to kill Mahishasur and other asurs after certain level of crimes they have done, if a husband has abused and raped you 100 times, 1000 times, for 10 years they were raping you, they were recording thousands of nasty pictures of you for years and years, are you going to, even if you were drugged, even if you were hypnotized, are you going to have a good equation with them, or will you be because your soul was continuously getting violated, will you be also, you've reached your limits? Like they also, every human understand this is where I'm trying to teach the spiritual element of this, that the man might think they have got away with it because they were hypnotizing it, or the man might think that just because the wife didn't say no to the sex while I was having the sex, it was okay, or a boyfriend might think just because my girlfriend didn't say no to it while I was doing this to her, it was so at a soul level it was a very okay thing to do to another human being. But the reality is it is not okay, it has never been okay, it has never been okay in God's eyes, and then it will not be okay after certain level of number of times you have violated another human being. It will just simply not be forgiven. This thing people don't understand, but there is a limit to Giselle should not be forgiving her, despite Christianity saying you forgive someone, despite any other religion saying you forgive someone. Understand, in Judaism also forgiveness has a number of limits. In Hinduism also they have spoken about forgiveness having a certain number of limits, and it is necessary to have those limits because, and other religions may have different, everyone's soul contract will have a different number of limits. Shishupal's soul contract limit was 100 crimes. Like, they knew Shishupal might have a hard time going through the challenge he will be going through on earth. That's why God has given him the mercy of committing 100 crimes. That doesn't mean if Shishupal's friends didn't had committed only 10 crimes, that another friend of Shishupal or another person, a grandson of Shishupal, they after committing 10 crimes also can get punished for what they did. Because if their soul contract was about that you have a limit of committing 10 crimes, but after that you can't commit any more crimes. And again, understand the definition of crimes also has a lot of things that God decides. It is up to God to decide it because of multiple reasons. But understand this, that Giselle can't forgive her husband. Giselle has to fight this case. That's why only she's fighting the case. And she's also actually going through complex trauma, but the complex traumas, traumatic part of her experience hasn't even surfaced for Giselle because she doesn't even have the energy or time to think about what has happened to her. But does that mean her soul memory doesn't have a recording of what happened to her? Does it mean that her body doesn't know what happened to her? Does it mean that her mentally she never understood what was happening to her? Meaning she consciously never understood what was happening to her, but the impact of some soul or multiple men violating your body, that impact stays in your subconscious memory of emotional health, psychological health, personal physical health. Her whole body shows the impact of what has happened to her, as well as her soul will also continue showing it until God decides how it needs to be healed. And for some people the healing will only happen if the right justice also happens for those people. And same way with Tracy, her body also actually shows trauma related symptoms, trauma that was covertly happening to her, and now she has slowly started waking up to the overt trauma also that was going on, where deliberately she forgot, where she was made to forget things. Understand this, 90% chance is there that she was hypnotized and she was made to forget Uriel in the car. 90% chance is there she was drugged and made to sleep for longer hours than she would have otherwise. Like, she would be because she was a school teacher and she's worked for so many years, and it's highly likely that she was only retired for a few years. That means that being retired for only a few years or few months before the first child died and a few years before the second child died, she is more likely to not have been the kind to sleep in the afternoon, sleep for long hours in the afternoon, sleep for deep level in the afternoon. A person who's working 10 hours in a day or 8 hours in a day in a school, do you think that person is used to having naps? No, I was working 12 hours in my workplace, so I never take naps. Very rarely I take naps. Is it also true that I did take naps in the last 10 years? After 8 years after I did my last job, I have slept odd hours, but in those odd hours also I know when the odd hours sleeping is happening when I am genuinely tired, and I know when the odd hour sleeping is happening when some drugging of me is going on or some other hypnosis related thing is going on, because I've had all these three happening to me in recent years as well. So understand this, people who are hypnotizing others, who are deliberately drugging others, who are deliberately manipulating someone else's life to make it seem that they are the guilty party when they are not, and when they are being influenced by someone else. Understand that in all these cases the right discernment has to happen, otherwise all that is going to happen is the guilty party will get away with their murder, get away with their indirect or direct killing of someone, get away with their large scope of influence and power they have in killing people or influencing the death of someone. And then the further such kind of people are not stopped, they get bolder and bolder because they're very smart people, usually smarter people with high IQ, people with very good narcissistic tendencies, people with lack of faith in God. They all seem to get away with these kind of things because they start having because they've got away with it, like Ted Bundy, like they are actually essentially having similar personality type like Ted Bundy or mass murderers, because they believe they can get away with it, because they have indeed got away with 10 years 20 years of doing something. You think that 10 years of whatever data has been found about Giselle, her husband didn't test and try it out in mini scale with other people? He did. And when he eventually got caught also, he was caught because he was also doing it to other people, because after having done it with Giselle for many years, of which 10 was recorded years or evidence gathered years, but it could be more than 10 years thing also could have happened with her. And likewise with all the other women, he's now testing it around. He's testing it around because he's got bolder and bolder. He got away with doing this to Giselle for more than 10 years. Definitely he must have got away for doing this for more than 10 years. It can't be possible that it was only a 10-year span. Okay, so he got away with doing it for more than 10 years with Giselle, with other possibly here and there women in his family also he might have got away with doing this. And then now he's looking for new victims, because they get bolder and bolder and bolder about expanding their crime, because they're enjoying it so much. No one is detecting it, no one is checking them from doing it, no one is punishing them from doing it. So then it becomes a bolder and bolder choice to keep doing what they think they can get away with doing. Same way with the people who have hypnotized me. They have thought for 40 years they've got away with hypnotizing me, with manipulating my life, with manipulating many circumstances of my life, whereas God also knows what was the limit of what they could have got away with, why they were allowed to get away with it, and when it is the time to end what they got away with. So same way with Tracy also, it is time. She wanted to run away. You know why? She was saying she wants her car and she wants to drive away from there. The reason why she is wanting to drive away, also understand, when covert abuse is happening, even if you don't know who is your covert abuser, or if multiple people are involved in your abuse, at the time you want to escape your abuse, any kind of abuse. If overt abuse is there, covert abuse is there, part of your safety response system will tell you to take flight, like run away from that situation. That's why she wanted to run away, not because she wanted to not face the consequences of the child dying, because she already told in that testimony that put me in prison. Also, she also said that put me in prison, lock me up, I deserve some punishment. Like all these kind of words were being said by her. I'm paraphrasing the essence of what was going through her brain, not saying the exact words she was saying, but that was the essence. She wanted to be punished because her granddaughter had died and she considers herself responsible for her death. But on the other hand, she also wanted to run away because the kind of malice she must have faced, the kind of judgment she must have faced from everyone after the grandson died, is what she can't believe she'll have to face again. And secondly, if the first one was also an orchestrated event to make her the incompetent one, second one was also an orchestrated event to make her the incompetent one, while she doesn't know who made her seem like this incompetent, who is wanting to maliciously harm her in this way, while her conscious Tracy Nix school teacher self doesn't know it. Her soul self knows someone is doing some harm to her, and it's her soul self that is wanting her to run away from there, because the same person, if she continues now living with that person, like I'm 90% confident it is her husband who is responsible, and possibly some other people who were indirectly responsible in enabling his abuse of her. But if it is her husband and you are in the same house as the person who is continuously manipulating you, harming you, hypnotizing you, drugging you, making you seem incompetent, creating circumstances to make you seem incompetent, creating circumstances to enable your health harm, because it is a health harming thing if you're poisoned and drugged. And like how the baby died possibly because I feel the baby died more because of the drugs than because of being left in the car. And if the baby has died because of the drugs as well, or the combination of drugs and being left in the car, that could also be the reason why she died. If she died because of all these reasons, understand that Tracy Nix's murder has also been planned in like that covert, malicious and slow step-by-step way. And this murder or very destruction of her life has been planned by this person, because if she goes to jail also, her destruction of her soul is happening, right? Because people are assuming she's done something that she hasn't done. People are maligning her for being irresponsible or callous or frivolous, when she's none of those actually in reality. If you look at her face, if you look at her life, you will know this about her. And if you understand human nature, you will also understand this is not the nature of a lack of consciousness driven, or lack of, she doesn't have the nature of not being responsible. She has the nature of being a responsible person. She has the nature and personality type of being actually carrying a lot of burdens on behalf of her family, that many of she might have, even if, understand this, in my case, when my mom died, after my mom died, the abuse spilled more into my life. It's not that I was not getting abused. I was all drugged and hypnotized, and all these things that were happening to my mother was happening to me as well. But while, let's say, 90% of drugging and abuse was happening to my mother, 10% drugging and abuse was happening to me as well. But as soon as my mother died, at that time again drugging and abuse, and I left India 2 years after my mother's death. So until those 2 years, again drugging and abuse and other things happened with me as well. And then when I left India, from that time onwards, whatever abuse and drugging and things like that was happened more to my brother. But again, when I came back, now the person, according to me, my dad plus other people were involved in all this. And all of those people, the same level of, because those people were also, they followed me to US also, or because it was a very strange conversation one time I had with a boyfriend who had drugged me as well, which I realized 30 years later or 20 years later. But that drugged, the boyfriend who had access to drugs also while working in labs where he worked with anesthetics and other things to drug animals he was doing research in, that same person who had access to a lot of drugs, who did potentially likely drug me, that same person, one time I had told him that you were a stranger to me that I met in US and I still trusted you, or some kind of conversation like that I was having. And in that conversation he said that no, I'm not you weren't a stranger to me. So that was a very odd thing to me, that for me he's a stranger, then why to him I am not a stranger? I didn't understand. And so people, when you are drugged and hypnotized and something happens to you while you are drugged and hypnotized, let's say I have a past history also with this person, I don't remember the history with this person, but this person can easily remember the history with me while I was drugged. Like while Giselle doesn't have any conscious memory of these 50 men sleeping with her, do those men have the memory of sleeping with her? Secondly, while her body doesn't, while there is only maybe 50 men found so far in this evidence who did this to her and who were recorded, but let's see, there were another 10-20 men who have additionally done this to her, who weren't recorded, or whose recordings are disappeared or something. If those people now, come in front of Giselle, her subconscious soul knows she was harmed by them, and she will have a trauma response to those men as well, in the same way as she will have a trauma response to the men who are already found in these recordings. I hope this makes sense, because this is how complex trauma and trauma of the hypnotized kind, trauma of the drugged kind happens, that your soul always will remember the person who did some harm to you. And only time that harm can be, you will not remember, or if it was forgiven by God, or if some other soul contract was made in such a way that you will work actively to work on the forgiveness of what happened to you. At that time point, maybe you will not have a bad response to someone who abused you. Otherwise, most of the time you will have a bad response to someone who has abused you consciously, subconsciously, druggingly, hypnotically, directly, indirectly, and irrespective of the man or whoever abused you, not taking culpability about it. You should not be forgiving those who don't deserve forgiveness, especially if they have reached the limit of abusing you, reached the limit of enabling your abuse, reached the limit of deliberately causing harm to you, reached the limits of deliberately making willful choices where even if they had a better choice to make, they didn't make the better choices. And these are all important things. Many women, many men who have been abused by their abusers, many children who have been abused by their abusers, They all have come on earth to learn, to work through, to be the examples like Tracy Nix of what happens to someone's life when a covert abuser is someone they have trusted for many, many years, when the covert abuser of their life can even calculatingly manufacture many circumstances to create such a kind of nastiness in your life that you get judged to be the culprit when you were not really and actually the culprit of that. And even if you were the culprit, just because you did the final act that resulted in something bad, understand that the culpability of that abuse or covert manipulation still at the soul level, at the karmic level, at the level at which God looks at justice, falls on the person who was responsible for doing what I am saying happened to Tracy, which is drugging and hypnosis driven actions and choices that she would not have done as a normally responsible school teacher. I hope this made sense, and this is very important because if someone can get away with doing some similar crap like this at their home life, they could have also got away doing this in someone's professional life. Someone can also, this is also one way in which child predators operate, and they will if they observe the personality, if they are high IQ child predators and they observe the personality of the caretaker, they do this to the caretaker to take the child away from the caretaker, while the caretaker is thinking I'm doing a normal activity, but they have hypnotized the caretaker to pretend as if they are doing a normal activity when the caretaker was not doing it. And this is also something my mother was doing. At that point I didn't realize, I couldn't understand why no one in my home was conversing with me, why no one in my home ever cared about what was going on in my childhood, in my life. So I used to always be puzzled, because that is not normal, right? You will have some conversation with your parents, you will have some conversation about daily life, about even simple things like, if we are both of us sitting and watching a movie, you may have a conversation about the movie you're watching. You may have a conversation not the day you watch the movie, but someday, sometime, as a result of wanting to converse with each other, as a result that two humans are living in the same house, someday, sometime, you may remember, oh, we had fun watching this movie, let's discuss this movie. Or while eating food, you may what is the recipe that you are doing, show me how to do this recipe. But those kind of normal conversations never ever transpired in my life, and now I'm realizing it didn't transpire because someone artificially manufactured things and conditions in my life such that people who were caretaking me never spoke with me, never talked to me, never had normal, sane human conversations with me. I had literally like 15 years or at least of conscious childhood days of memories with my parents where no conversation only has happened with them of any kind that normal parent child conversation should be of. And that was a very strange experience for me. And the only time my parents would converse or have some conversations or would be when they were visiting family. So which is a very odd thing, right? So anyways, so I hope this made sense. Anyone has I have a lot of bizarre stories I can tell about what happens to a child when something bizarre and covertly abusive is going on to a child, to an adult. And based on my experiences only, I'm making this video, not because I am a clinically certified covert abuse specialist or anything, but maybe someday I should take that specialization, I don't know. But I'll tell you that the level of experience I have with covert abusers, I can very easily many a times detect who is the covert abuser, and also those who slyly, if one major covert abuser is there in front of you, there are in Giselle Pelicot's life many minor covert abusers of hers also present in her life that she will eventually have to wake up to. But she is got in such complex, she will go to such complex trauma that sometimes God hides also and slowly reveals all your covert abusers. So for Giselle also, her covert abusers will be revealed to you slowly. Same way with Tracy also, her covert abusers or enablers of her abuse will be revealed slowly to her. Even though I know majority of the players who were responsible for at least based on all the histories that I have taken, some of the players are already revealed in this history, but the rest of the players who were responsible for her covert abuse might still be hidden somewhere. But these main players, if they don't get accountability, they will continue committing crimes against other people. That's why only I'm making these videos. And understand, those wanting to get inspired now in a negative manner after listening this, they need to understand that while Tracy Nix's husband or other people who were manipulating things against her got away with accusing her of murdering 2 children, or even getting her prosecuted for that murder, God sees everything. God knows who is accountable for what. And while in this case maybe 2 instances of child death were forgiven, and people have not accused someone of being responsible for those children's death, the next time or in their next life, if they do the same thing, their level of karma is such that they will not be forgiven. Even if they were innocent, they will not be forgiven eventually, if they don't understand and take accountability, and if they have the personality type and genes of not taking accountability, deliberately maliciously harming people. Because earth is on an ascension phase also. This page is about ascension. So understand, you can't ascend to a higher way of living with people who are not ascending, people who have not evolved, with people continuously being in a hamster wheel of life, where they think they can get away with whatever rubbish they have been getting away with. Just because you thought you were getting away with it doesn't mean you are getting away with it. Does that make sense? So there is, and God has a plan for everyone, where you will go when you have been stuck on this hamster wheel and you've deliberately, maliciously, unaccountably continue harm, despite given warnings, despite given chances, despite being forgiven hundreds of times. Everyone has a place they will go. God knows where they will go, why they will go there, how they will go there. But if you don't want to go there, understand this. You have to take accountability, and you can't blame people who are accountable people for being the unaccountable one, which is another problem in Tracy Nix's case. There are many people who don't want to take the accountability. In Giselle Pelicot's case also, there are many people who are completely putting the accountability of what happened to her on the husband, where it is not possible that the degree of things that Giselle Pelicot went through could have gone through it without other people being unaware. Again, in their family also, her grandchildren, her daughters, other people in the family also went through certain enabling of abuse things they would have done to her, or someone who was her friend, best friend, because she couldn't have been drugged that easily just simply by one person. Multiple people were continuously likely drugging her, enabling her drugging, helping the grandfather in drugging and things like that. So understand, in both these cases, while the major criminal might be the spouse, but everyone else who has empathy towards the spouse, who got charmed by the spouse to do something, who got bribed by the spouse to do something, they are also the minor enablers of these 2 women's torture, these 2 women's emotional trauma, these 2 women's complex PTSD, all of which needs to be examined and further looked into. And Tracy actually needs to live in a separate house from her husband, irrespective of whether she gets jailed or doesn't get jailed. Otherwise, what I've discussed here, if Tracy has started waking up to this, and if she even has one conversation with her abuser about her getting woken up to what she has woken up to, her life will be in even greater danger. Same way, if Giselle Pelicot's other family members who are responsible in enabling her abuse, or other social groups who were responsible in some way in enabling her abuse, if they wake up to her deeper understanding of what greater extent of harm was going on with her, again understand that her life is also going to be in danger. And these 2 women, if they die, understand this also, deaths of women like these, humans like the level of personality traits that have made them strong enough to withstand so many years of abuse, covertly or overtly, because Tracy was going through mostly many kinds of overt abuse in her marital life, and Giselle was going through hidden abuse, which were with many people possibly knowing how that hidden abuse was happening to her, and Giselle not being aware about it at a conscious level. But both of these, and both were covert, hidden, abusive situations and manipulation related situations going on in their life. But these women of this caliber who go through also 30-40 many years of such kind of abuse, where they may not recognize their abuse, which also happened with my mother. She didn't recognize many aspects of her abuse until the last 10 years of her life, and even after recognizing it, it's very, very incomprehensible, like how Tracy had her head like this during the testimony, when her testimony was only being played in the courtroom. Understand that this level of headache that she's getting, or she can't comprehend what the F is going on here in her life. This is how my mother used to feel. It's just that my mother is not the what the F kind of a person. Neither was she. She was a much easygoing and much softer person than Tracy Nix. So that's why for her the best way out of her misery was her death. She died after 20 years of being married to a cruel, abusive person, with majority people around her not understanding her abuse. And like that, it was a merciful death that happened to Uriel and the other baby as well. Because understand this, if some predator is there in their family who has got away with abusing women, and I believe that this father has drugged not only his wife, he has likely possibly drugged his daughters as well and hypnotized his daughters. So some of these daughters' responses, if you see, sound a little fake or look a little fake. They don't look very normal and natural. Understand this, if you are hypnotized, your actions and choices also will not be actually that authentic or that genuine. So I believe both the daughters also have been hypnotized in minor ways or major ways, and sexual abuse might have happened to all three women in this family. And if Uriel died, it was a mercy for Uriel because of this reason, because Uriel, when after she had turned possibly 10 or 13, her level of abuse could have also escalated if this predatorial practices of this family had continued even then when she grew up, or if it had begun for her already at a small perversion level while she was a small baby. That I don't know, that I can't, I have no clue about, but that was going to be the future trajectory of Uriel if she had grown up, and might have also started. That is the part I have no confidence or proof about, that definitely happened to her or not happened to her. But the point of death that God decides sometimes of certain souls is, that's why decided based on what is going to be the future trajectory of their abuse, future trajectory of their harm, future trajectory. And in Giselle's in Uriel's case, I will post all the 6 links that I have written about the chemical analysis related or other ancillary factors related problems that were resulting in her death. Because her death is not simply, she didn't die at such a young age simply because covert abuse of her grandmother was going on, or malicious intent towards her grandmother and other family was going on. That is part of the story, but the rest of the story is in those 5-6 videos that I made. And then from those 5-6 stories, then God determines, like, if this child in the future will not get right caretaking, right supportive health, right treatments, right people to guide her into a safe life, better quality life, those children also end up dying as a merciful choice by God. So many people, when they fall away, when their small child dies in their care, or when someone they love died too early, people need to understand, the person who died too early, there was sometimes mercy also involved in their death from God's point of view. So I hope this was informative. Again, anyone has questions, comments, please place a question, comment here. Anyone wants to connect with me on any of these topics, connect with me via the connection. I have put links I have put in my description page of this YouTube page. Usually in most of my videos I have a lot of other things that I may not speak of in the video, that I edit in the description section of these videos. So anyone watching my videos, please also read my description section in case I made any errors, in case I want to clarify something, in case there's something I forgot while speaking, because as I said, I have also complex trauma, complex abuse going on in my life, as a result of which sometimes I jump from topic to topic, or sometimes I fail to clarify something, or sometimes I'm also dyslexic while speaking and say the opposite things, and sometimes I make human errors. So that's why I always put a lot of material in my description section, and my contacts are that's why not there, but in the description section of my page, about me page, if you go there, you will find my contact information, where via which you can connect to me. Thank you very much. Have a great day.